In this video, we will be covering the 6 types of fundamental obstacles you will see in obby games. These include typical jumps, where the player has to jump over gaps between parts. We're going to cover jumps with rectangular parts, spheres and wedges. Very thin parts the player has to walk across. Kill blocks that will kill the player when they're touched. And sets of parts where the player has to figure out which one can be collided with, if that makes sense. I'll put an example on the screen, and parts that disappear after they've been touched. Now, just before we do start, the game we will make throughout this little series I will not be making public at the end, as I did with the Speed Simulator series or the +1 jump every second, purely because we already have an obby out. If you would like to get an idea of what obbies of an obby that we've made, do check out Dimension Obby. We don't really work on it anymore, but if you guys like it, then maybe we can get back to it. You can find the link to that game in the description. Okay, to get started, we're going to delete the base plate. Now, if we go to model and then we can click on spawn, we'll insert a spawn location into the game. Now, this is good for your typical ROBLOX game. However, because as you'll see in the next video when we work on checkpoints, we are going to use pre-named parts for our stages, and you want to start on stage 1. You don't want to start at the spawn location, you want to start on stage 1 unless you want to stage 0. So we're going to actually not use the spawn location, and we're going to add in a part and make this however big you want your checkpoints to be. We will cover this in more detail in the next video, but for now let's just create a rough template. Let's call it, for now we'll just rename it to spawn checkpoint. We will be renaming this in the future, but just for now, just for this video, just so we can work on the obstacles, let's keep it simple. Let's just make it, first of all, let's anchor it, and under model let's hit scale, and we can make this as big as we want. I'm going to make this an 8x8. No, I'm not. I'm going to make this a 14x14. And if we now hit test and play here, as long as your camera is above the part, hitting test and play here, you'll see when we spawn in, we spawn on the checkpoint. If you want it bigger, make it bigger. If you want it smaller, make it smaller. But this is the sort of template I'm going to go with for now. So for now, just to differentiate the different stages we're going to make, I'm going to give each of these a different colour. So this first colour will be red, and then we'll go, so we've got 6 obstacles. So 6 stages we're going to cover, so I'll do red, purple, blue, light blue, green, yellow, orange. That makes sense. So the first stage will be red. That is not a very nice colour on the eye. So first of all, let's cover jumps with rectangular parts. So what we want to do is under home, we want to add in a part into the workspace. And we're going to use the move tool. And what we want to do is sort of position this as far as you want the jump to be. This is the first stage, so you want to keep in mind that we want it easy. And I'm going to level it up if I go sideways, or we can top right where you see this little world view sort of button. We can click back and it will line us perfectly level, and then we can just make sure they are level like that. Now, the reason everything's scaling perfectly for me is because I have under model, I have move ticked with 1 stud, so each move is moving it 1 stud. And my rotation's 45 degrees, and snap to parts is on. If you want to sort of freely move this, just sort of like that, you can turn the move off. But I'm going to keep that on at 1 stud, because it makes it a lot easier to design obbies. Now I want this to be the exact same length. And just like that, I think that's the first jump. I'll make this, let's make it green. If I right click this part and hit duplicate, or Control D, or I believe it's Command D if you're on Mac, not too sure, I can then drag it across, and the distance between the checkpoint and the part here, if we hold on to it, you see we get a little number. If we go all the way across, we can see it's 5 from the checkpoint. So we want this one to be, if we line them next to each other, just to be perfectly symmetrical, we want this one to be 5. So there we go, -5, and that is exactly the same jump. Let's have maybe 5 of these. There we go, just 4 of those will do, and now we'll duplicate the spawn checkpoint, and we'll rename this to checkpoint 2. And we'll drag this across, and once again, line it up, and we want this to be 5. Obviously design the levels how you want them, but I'm just showing off an example. Here we have our first stage. You can sort of see how it makes up a level. I'm going to click on this checkpoint 2 and make it purple. Now what I'm going to do is grab each of these 4 parts that we made here, and I'm going to right click and hit group as a folder. And what this does is it puts all 4 parts into one folder, which we can click on in the Explorer and drag them all together. It also just keeps our Explorer nice and tidy, which is something that is very important when it comes to making an obby. You do not want an Explorer with thousands of parts all over the place having to scroll forever. Keep everything in a nice folder. I am now going to right click and just rename this, and I'll just call it 1. The reason we're calling it 1 is because it's stage 1. Now what I'm going to do is right click that folder again and hit group as a folder again, and I'm going to rename this folder to stages. Now what we have is a stage folder. If we open this, we have 1, which is our first stage, and then when we make the second stage in a minute, we'll put it in the stages folder and call it 2. And you can see how it starts to make a bit more sense. It's just all about keeping the sort of Explorer nice and neat and clean on the eye. What we could do is actually group this stage 1, group it as a folder again and rename this folder to stage 1, or just call it 1 to 10. So this is the first 10 stages. So we have stage 1 in here, then we'll have stage 2, and then when we get to stage 11, we'll create an 11 to 20. It's just about keeping the Explorer nice. Anyway, for the next stage, we want to cover jumps with spheres. So let's have a look at how we would do that. Under part, I'm going to hit the sort of arrow underneath it, and we're going to click the sphere. Now, I'm going to colour it maybe light blue. And again, I'm going to try and line it up. If I hit the back again and hold Q on the keyboard or E, I can go up and down. So I'm going to hold Q, just some sort of level. And let's have a look. Where are we level? About here. It won't be perfect, but it's a sphere, so it doesn't really matter. And now I'll just sort of put that where I want. I might have these ones a bit more randomly spaced, so I'll duplicate that using Control D. Might make that go up a bit. Duplicate it again, might make this one go down, but sort of over here a bit. And maybe if I do one over here, up. You don't want to make the jumps impossible as well. And then maybe one just here, and then we'll get the checkpoint, which we will call checkpoint 3. There we go, and I'm just going to make the colour of this new checkpoint dark blue. Perfect. Now I want to select all those parts we've made. First of all, anchor them, and right click, group as a folder, and this is the second stage, so we'll give it the name of just the number 2, and then drag that into our 1 to 10 folder. And you can see how that sort of makes a bit more sense now. Now something that is really important is we want to test each level after we make it, or a few levels at a time. There's nothing worse than making 10 levels, testing it, and it turns out that one of the jumps is impossible, so you have to change it all. I would test it after every single level you make. So to start, I'll hit test, and first of all I want to make sure my camera is over this red thing, so when we hit play here it does appear. If you want, we could add in a spawn location under model and then spawn, and just drag that on top for now, and then we'll remove that once we've added the checkpoint functionality. Now if we hit play, we go, so we jump across, so these jumps are all possible. We go into stage 2, this is a little bit trickier, but still possible. Perfect. Now we'll just quickly cover wedge jumps. So the exact same just with wedges. So to access wedges, it's under part and then wedge. You have got corner wedges and cylinders as well. I'm not going to cover them because at this point it's the exact same, it's just different shapes. I'm just wanted to sort of show everyone how to access the different shapes and play around with their sizes. So for this one I'm going to make this half the width of the checkpoint, but if I just make it longer and then a bit taller, first I'll just make it level as well, and I will just add these but sort of to the side a bit, one there and one there, just like that. They are not perfectly spaced, but that's alright, and we'll just whack this one here. This will be checkpoint 4. Again, the checkpoints are getting messy, we will sort them out in the next video. If you're going to make all your stages or loads of stages before the next one comes out, it's worth grouping all your checkpoints into a folder, which is actually what I'm going to do. I'm just going to select all my checkpoints, right click, hit group as a folder. I will rename this to checkpoints. And if just for the sake of the next video, what we'll actually do is rename each checkpoint. So the spawn one will just be the number 1, because that's checkpoint 1. Checkpoint 2 will be number 2, checkpoint 3 will be number 3, and checkpoint 4 will be number 4. We can name it perfectly valid 1, 2, 3, 4 because it's in this checkpoints folder. We know what these are, so we don't need a name like checkpoint 1. We can just put 1 because we know it's a checkpoint because it's in the checkpoint folder. I hope that makes sense. Now I'll just quickly select these wedges. Of course, make sure I anchor them. Always make sure you anchor them because that stops the parts falling into the void and disappearing. And now what we will do is we will right click, let me select them again. Group as a folder, this will be 3. And drag that into our 1 to 10 folder. And I'm also going to make each of these parts yellow. You could make them different colours, it's up to you. Now we will change the colour of this part, this checkpoint, to a light blue. Okay, now let's look at making some thin parts that the player can walk across. So I'm going to add in a part in here, and once again we'll just line it up as we have been doing. Just bring it out into the front, and we want the back view. Hold down Q on the keyboard, and then we can get level. Just sort of see where that is. There we go, that's perfect. Now I'm going to have it here, and I'm going to scale it inwards. That's what I'm going to do. By holding control and the blue one, I can actually scale this in evenly from both sides, rather than having to do that, then that. If I just hold control, I can make it nice and easy. And we'll just extend this along here. And I'm going to move this all the way onto this side, and what I might do is actually duplicate it and make another one. Just in front of it, which is going to come across this way, just so we're in line with this checkpoint. I'm not sure if that's, let's go for top view. I think it needs to come out one more, there we go. And duplicate that again, same thing, bring it out in front of this one we've just made and extend it along. And I think I will have the next checkpoint just here. So we'll call this checkpoint, we'll call this number 5. We'll select these 3 parts, we want to anchor them. Right click, group as a folder, drag that into our stages folder, into our 1 to 10, and this will be stage 4. I'm also just going to colour them because why not? Let's make them all like a red sort of colour, maybe like a light red. There we go. And I'll make this checkpoint colour light green. There we go, or sort of a lime colour. Now let's have a look at some kill blocks. Now we are going to create some script. It will be very easy, but just before we do, let's actually create these kill blocks. So what I'm going to do is just have a walkway. So I'm going to make a part, which I'm going to bring down just in front of, let me make sure, obviously this is all level again, yep. Just going to put it in front of this checkpoint, extend it out a little bit. And the only thing I'm going to do here is add some kill blocks. So I might just make this, let's go for yellow. And then I'll make the other checkpoint first as well, just to quickly get that out of the way. And I'll rename this to checkpoint 6. I'll just make the colour, I think next is yellow. Oh, that is not a very good colour, so let's change the colour of this walkway to orange. There we go, that just looks a bit, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking there. Now I'm going to add in another part on here, and this is going to be one of my kill bricks. So if I just make this expand it across, make it really thin, and the player's going to have to jump over this, and there's going to be a few of them, and if they hit it, they're going to die. So I think it makes sense to make a kill block red. I would say so anyway. And I'm going to rename this part just a kill brick, or kill part, just so we know that it's a part that kills you. Now what we need to do in here is actually add in a script. So if we go to this add, we can add in a script, and in this script we first of all want to get the part. So part equals script.parent. Now what we want to do is call a function whenever the part's touched. To do that we'll say part.touched, :connect function, and we're going to pass in hit as a parameter. Hit is the object that touches the part. It's automatically passed through. Now we need to get the player's character, so say local char or character equals hit.parent, because the idea is if say the player's left leg hits the part, the parent of that will be the player's character. And then we could say if char then, so if there is a character, if the character exists, local humanoid equals we want to do char : find first child humanoid, and this is storing the player's humanoid in a variable. The reason we want to do this, well, first of all, just because something touched the part doesn't mean it's the player, so it could still have a parent, which wouldn't be a player. So the humanoid is a way of verifying that it's the player, because players have humanoids. We also want to use the humanoid to kill it, as you'll see in a minute. And what find first child does is it will try and find the humanoid instance in the character. If it can't find the humanoid, so if there isn't a humanoid for whatever reason, it's just going to ignore this. Humanoid will effectively be null, and nothing will happen, because what we need to say now is if humanoid then. So if there isn't a humanoid, as I say, if it's null, if it doesn't exist, we're not going to call this code, so the player won't die, because the code we want to call in here is humanoid.health equals 0, and this is just one of the ways to kill the player. There's a couple ways, but this is probably the easiest just for this example. Now we can close that script, and let's actually before we duplicate it, let's quickly test it. So let's anchor the part it's on as well. Let's hit test them. I think, where did we get up to? Did we do the wedge jumps? I'm not sure. Let's go just after these spheres. Just test the last few levels. You should really try and test each level after you've done it, but I can't remember if I've done the wedges or not, so I'll do it again. This fin one, perfect. We could make it even thinner, but because I have my move snapped to one stud, I'm limited to one stud. But if you want to make it even thinner, just turn off your snap and you can really go for it. So we can jump over this, and if we touch it, we die. Perfect, and we should respawn, not on the checkpoint because we're going to do that in the next video, but we respawn. Perfect. Now just duplicate it, maybe move it like 10 spaces, and same with this one, maybe 10, and the final one. Perfect, and then we will just have that checkpoint there. Perfect. Now I'm going to obviously select them all, make all the parts, make sure they're all anchored, right click, group as a folder, drag it into the 1 to 10 folder, and this is stage 5. Now what we're going to do is those sort of rows of parts you see where the player has to figure out which one can be collided with. But to do this, what I'm going to do first of all is add a part. So I'm going to have rows of 3. You could do more, but I'm just going to do 3. So I'm going to add a part which is going to be long enough to fit 3 rows. Again, holding control to expand this here on both sides equally. Otherwise I have to manually do each side, which I don't really want to do. So let's make it maybe 30. And then the length, I'll just make it like 6, it doesn't really matter. And what I'm going to do is just, rather than adding a new part, I'll be lazy and duplicate this one, bring it in, so we know it was 32 in length, we want to fit 3 across. Let's just, with a gap in the middle, let's just make this one 8. Line it up just so it's sort of in front of this part we've just made, and make it nice and long, maybe 26. Actually 28, 30, we'll go 30. Let's make that one colour, maybe let's go red. Then we'll duplicate it, move it across, right to the end, just so we can gauge where the middle is. And we'll maybe make this one blue, and the one in the middle, the reason I did that is just because then now it's easy to gauge where the middle is. We'll just make this one maybe green. And now just have to figure out which one is not collidable, which we'll get to in a minute. Let's duplicate this and duplicate these 3 parts again. What I've just done is made another new checkpoint, renamed it to 7. I'm going to make this one orange, and I'm going to select all these parts, anchor them all, right click them, and I'm going to group it as a folder. Once again into the 1 to 10 stages folder. This is stage 6, and now you're probably thinking, oh, how do we make these so only one can be collided with? Well, we're going to click on each one. So for the first one, I want the red one to be the one that the player has to walk across. So I'll leave that, but I'm going to click on the green and scroll down in the properties tab to CanCollide, and I'm going to turn that off, and same with the blue one. And now in this one, I want the blue one to be the one that can be walked across, so I'll turn off green and I'll turn off red. And that just stops CanCollide. If that's turned off, means any objects will fall through it, so the player cannot touch it. Now if we played just from here, you'd see if I touch the green, I die. I'm not going to let myself respawn because I don't want to be all the way back at the beginning. If I touch the blue, I die. But if I touch the red, I can go through. I'm not going to test it again. I'm sure you can trust by the example I've just shown that the blue one works and the others don't if I just walked across it there, as you can see. So now just to quickly wrap this video up, because we have made a nice couple of stages here. The last one we're going to quickly make is parts that disappear after you touch them. So what I'm going to do is add in a part, the length of this platform, as we've been doing, just basically on the similar to this sort of grey platform we've got here, just the same length. It doesn't really matter. To design how you want. Just this is actually perfect. I'm going to make it grey, and what I'm going to do is duplicate it. Actually, first of all, let's make the script. So let's add in a script into this part, which I'm in here. This is when the player touches it, we're going to make it fade away and then reappear. This is going to be a bit more complicated. I'm not going to go over the code too much in this video because I just want to show you how to sort of make the stages. We'll definitely cover code a lot more when we cover checkpoints. But just for now, just to get the bearings, I'll cover the basics. So again, we want the part, which is the script.parent, because the parent of the script is the part. And we're going to create something called a dbounce, which are going to be set to false, db for short. This just means that the code will not keep running loads of times. The code will only run once until the part has finished going transparent, and then it will reset. So it just stops the code running loads of times. You'll see in a minute. Now when the part's been touched, we're going to call a function, so part.touched : connect function, again passing in hit because we know that's automatically passed. It's the object that touches the part. Now if db is false, then if the dbounce is false, we're going to call some code here. Let me just remove that breakpoint. First of all, again we're going to get a character and check if the character exists, and the humanoid, exact same checks as before, using find first child again. If humanoid, exact same checks. Now the only difference is here, if we've got this far, we're going to want to make it invisible, or make it fade out and then go invisible. But before we do that, we want to set the dbounce to true. So I'm going to say db equals true. That will just stop all this code running again, because we don't want it to start fading and then run again and reset, and then it just keeps resetting the fade. It will just never go invisible. So that's why we want the dbounce. Now we're going to loop for I equals 1, and I'm going to do 20 steps. You can do as many as you want. Obviously, the more you go, the more demanding it is on memory, and the slower it will be. However, the more you go, the higher this number here, the smoother it will be. But anything past 20, you can't really tell the difference. What we'll say is part.transparency equals I over 20. And this is because a transparency of 1 means it's invisible, a transparency of 0 means it's visible. So let's just do some quick maths. 1, 5, 10 and 20. So 1 over 20, the transparency is 1 over 20. That is like 0.05. 5 over 20, that's 0.25. 10 over 20, that's 0.5. 15, that'd be 0.75, and 1, that'll be 20. So that'll be 20 over 20. That'll be 1. You can just sort of see how that's gradually over time getting more and more transparent. And what we're also going to do is just add in a wait 0.05 seconds, just to sort of give it time to fade. Otherwise, it just it will run this at clock speed, or the speed the program's running. That will go super quick. In the blink of an eye, it'll be gone. So that just allows us to wait some time. I've done 0.05 because we've got between 1 and 20. 1/20th of a second is 0.05 seconds. If you've done like 1 and 50, I would do 1/50th of a second, or 1 and 60, 1/60th of a second, so 0.01. Just make it relative to what you've got your range as here. Now, when it's gone invisible, we want it so the player cannot collide. We want to turn CanCollide off, as we just saw with the previous objects we just made, so the player falls through it. Part.CanCollide equals false. Now we'll wait 2 seconds before we reset it, so part.CanCollide equals true, and we want to set the transparency back to 0, and then we can set our debounce to false because we're ready to go again. So these last 4 lines here just reset the part so it can be touched again, because we don't want it to go invisible forever. Now let's quickly test this. So let's anchor our part here and just click play here, because we don't want to duplicate loads of parts and then it turns out the script doesn't work, because then we've got loads of scripts to fix. So we touch it, it goes invisible, and we fall through it. Perfect. And just make sure it reappears as well. It's always good to test every scenario you can. So let's touch it, give it 2 seconds, and it reappears. Perfect. And we can do it again and it should reappear. And it does, yeah. Perfect. So now I'm going to duplicate that part, bring it a bit closer. I might even make the grey a bit darker actually if we wanted to go fancy. And again. And again. And duplicate the checkpoint, drag it to the end. This will now be checkpoint 8. And let's make the colour red. There we go. We did just get enough colours for... Actually, we can't do red. We've already used it. Well, we can reuse it, but I'd rather not. I want to hold off the reusing as much as we possibly can. Let's go for this funky colour. We've already used that. Wow. Okay, we've really... Let's go for this one. I'm sure. Yeah, there we go. That'll do. And now let's select all these parts. Just right-click them. Group as a folder. Let me close some stuff up in here. Drag that folder into stages 1 to 10, and this is stage 7. Perfect. And you can sort of see how it's starting to come along now. I can't remember if all these are anchored. Yeah, they are. Yeah, you can sort of see how all this is coming along. We've got our stages that we're going to work with in this series. Obviously, now that you've seen all the sort of basic types, go ahead, go wild, make all the stages you want. In the next video, we're going to work on the checkpoint system. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. If you have any questions about this video, please leave a comment in the description and I'll try and get back to everyone. Alternatively, if you do need direct help with your programming and it would be easier for us just to see the code, it's worth joining our Discord server and asking in there. Thanks for watching everyone, and goodbye.